Well, hello there. So glad you found your way to the sketch session tonight. I hope you're doing well. I hope that I'm looking over there because I always need to double check that I'm seeing myself on the other screen. I hope you had a great day and I hope you are ready for just a little bit of art therapy tonight. And don't worry, that doesn't I need you to get out any incense or don't need to grab your singing bowl. Although if you have them, might as well grab them. I won't judge. But no, to be serious, tonight's sketch session, I created it in a way so it would have a very therapeutic effect on us, hopefully. And to do so, I decided to focus on something that I think is an inherent strength of us artists, and that is to notice details. I think we artists are uniquely disposed to noticing the little things that other people usually overlook, the little things that most people don't take the time to pay attention to. And we artists, we notice them and we delight in not just noticing them, but also in marking them down in our artworks. We use them to turn them into beautiful pieces of art or to kind of put the icing on top. So that's how tonight will be therapeutic in that regard. Also, I believe that in moments in your life where you might feeling the heaviness, like especially right now, if you might feel the heaviness of pandemic life wearing you down, or just any other sorts of heaviness that might be just kind of dragging you down a little bit, I know of little that's better than zeroing in on details and going granular and really slowing down to record the smallest things in front of you in the most particular way you can. It really gets you in the moment and has a really beneficial and calming effect. And I'll show you tonight how to do it so you even like the outcome, hopefully. So in my book, that's a win-win, and I hope you're game for it tonight as well. So hey Ted, hey Chris, good to see you guys. If you're seeing this stream and you haven't drawn with us before, my name is Carolyn and I'm the owner of Cura Studios, where I teach classical drawing skills so artists can build a very solid footing to explore their creative voice from. And every Thursday we meet at 7:30 Pacific Standard Time to sketch together for a little bit over an hour. And in my mind, this is the place that you can come to, like where it feels like you have some place to report to, something that will motivate you, inspire you to pull out your sketchbook, because other people will be there with you. And it will be beneficial to you because I will have a lesson prepared for you and some reference. So you don't even have to do anything. All you got to do is bring a pencil and some paper, and the rest is already figured out. And by doing that, I hope to make it really easy for you to keep up your creative practice. And we rotate subject matter from figure to portrait to animals to inanimate things. And tonight you are coming in on the bugs and blossom night. So we have some beautiful blossoms, flowers. I was cheating a little bit. It's not just blossoms, it's flowers too, and some bugs crawling on them. And we'll use those small little things to really zero in and record all the details. And I'll show you how to go about it in a way where you don't get confused and where you don't get frustrated with your tools, and we hopefully will like the results. Let me think if there's anything else I wanted to say before we jump right in. Well, if I think about it, I'll tell you later. But let's jump into oh, you know what? I remember what I wanted to say. If it is your first time, I wanted to tell you how you can get the most out of this. You can get the most out of this by watching the stream on your biggest screen in the house, because like that, you'll see the reference material big, and the bigger your reference material is, especially for tonight's lesson about details, the easier of a time you'll have seeing what it is you want to draw. And that's the second thing, you want to draw along. So yes, I will give you a little lesson up front, but the real learning happens by you drawing alongside with me. That's why I'm streaming later on my drawing board next to the reference image, and then you can see how I'm drawing, and I want you to draw along, and you'll hear me narrate as I'm drawing, and that will give you little cues to like, oh yeah, I need to do this. And like that, you're learning along with us in real time, and that's really how you will get the most out of the next 60 minutes. So I hope you're not just kicking back, I hope you're gonna draw with me. All right, so now we can get into the core of the lesson. The thing with details, most of us, I know there are exceptions, but most of us artists are really good at noticing the details. And we're usually chomping at the bit to just like get to them, just because they're so satisfying to sink your teeth into. But the problem is that often we don't bide our time and we want to jump to the details too soon. And so my first point for you tonight is that you want to make sure that you have a very solid underdrawing before you get to those details. And so an underdrawing establishes to yourself on the page, how big do I want this drawing to be? What are the shapes involved? And how big, that's what I just said. And you know, I'm losing my train of thought. So let me repeat. How big do I want it to be on the page? How many parts are there? And where on the page do I want it to be? So those are the things I want to say. Where on the page, how big on the page, and how many elements are there? So that's what you're placing in the underdrawing phase. And the key about the underdrawing is that you want it to be erasable. So often we, especially if you're heavy-handed, we get too dark too soon, and then even if we try to erase, there's like these dark pressure lines left on the page that make it hard to then add details over in a way where the details can actually sing, where the details can shine brightly. So the underdrawing becomes our guardrails, our scaffolding, if you want to. So when we do have, or when we do come to the moment in time where the details are right, we have a place to set them on in a solid way. So that's the first point. The second point is, even before you jump in or in this underdrawing phase, I want you to become very clear in your own head about of the thing that you're seeing. What do you want to focus in on? So with us, we always, for these sketch sessions, have very short time periods that we draw, because it makes us it forces us to make quick decisions. And the more you do that, the better your decisions become. And so when you only have 10 minutes for a drawing, you want to decide, okay, of this image, what is my most favorite part? And then you keep focusing your drawing onto that favorite part, so you don't waste time on the parts that aren't so important to you, and then you never get to the details. So have a good underdrawing, know exactly what you want to focus in on, and plan for that area to shine brightly later on. The third point I have for you, especially in the area of focus, but even around it, you want to count out what the elements are. So for example, we'll be drawing blossoms today and flowers. And so what do blossoms and flowers have in common? They all have pestils and stamen, and they have flower petals, they have leaves. So you will want to literally at a certain point in time, not right away, but eventually, take the moment to count, okay, how many leaves are on the right side? How many blossom petals are on the bottom left corner? How many pestils do I see over here? And then you want to count them out and make sure that on your drawing you have the same amount and that you've arranged them in the same amount before you go in with a heavier hand and mark them in darkly. Number 4, keep tons of sharp pencils nearby, and as you're drawing, keep your pencil on point. And in that same vein of thought, make sure you use the right kind of tools. So I will be using graphite pencils tonight, as well as Prismacolor Verathin pencils. The reason why I'm choosing those is because if you have a fine enough point on them, you can be very minute in the details that you record. And yet you can also keep a certain degree of lightness with them in the beginning for that underdrawing. So I have a nice range between keeping a lighter touch up front, but then still being able to push dark enough later when the detail phase starts. For example, something that you do not want to work with are, especially if details are your focus, you don't want to be working with a very soft charcoal pencil. Very soft charcoal pencils are perfect for shading things in quickly, for establishing dark, contrast-rich values very quickly. But if your goal for your drawing is a nuanced, delicate, detailed drawing, you don't want to go with an extra soft or a soft charcoal. Same thing is with the paper. You don't want to have super bumpy paper. So if you think about a watercolor paper, some of those watercolor papers, especially if they're cold press, they're very bumpy. And so you won't be able to establish the kind of details that you might be hoping for. So make sure your materials are working for you, not against you. And just because your pencil was sharp the moment you began your drawing doesn't mean that when you go to the detail phase, it'll still be sharp. You'll have to resharpen that and keep it like a needle. So make sure you have a really good sharpener on hand tonight. And the last point will be to take your time. Especially with complex imagery, there is a toll that is required of us artists, and that toll is to slow down. In our culture, everything is fast. We want to move fast, we want to learn fast, and we want to draw fast. And there is certainly something to be said for being able to draw quickly. But when we get to the details, we need to make a mental shift, saying, okay, let's say you have only 3 minutes left for the details. At that moment, you flip a switch in your brain and you say, and now I'm going to slow down, and I'm imagining like I'm a microbe crawling along the outer edges of whatever it is you're drawing, noticing every single little change. And with that slowing down, you will notice things even more so than others ever will. And that will give your drawing that special something that people can't often put into words. So with that, I have, I think, 5 photos that we'll be working from. And we begin with 10 minutes on the first one, and then we'll lengthen it to, I think, 15 for the last ones. I have a timer over here, so that will keep us on track. And if you have questions throughout the night, let me know. I'll eventually glance to the chat every so often. So let me transition the camera here. And as I said, I have a ton of different pencils over here. I'll try working with the Stettlers first. So I have a 4B, and see they're nice and pointy. So they should literally poke you when you touch them. If they're not poking you, they're not pointy enough. And if you're having trouble getting them pokey enough with a regular pencil sharpener, I recommend having sandpaper nearby, like a fine grit sandpaper. Okay, let me set my timer so I don't lose myself in time. And in the beginning, you probably won't see very well what I'm doing because I'm drawing very faintly. So remember what I said in the beginning, we want to have an erasable underdrawing. So this erasable underdrawing will look pretty faint on your screen. I'm trying to go a little bit darker than I usually would. But I also don't want to get myself into trouble here. Sorry, I was just looking over at the chat, Ted. I know. I noticed that like before I went live, and like, you know what? I'll just roll with it. We're not one-dimensional creatures. We have lots of nuance that we can hold, right? We're not just one way. Okay, so as I'm getting into my underdrawing here, let me articulate what I'm looking for. I'm looking at what's called the big enveloping shape. like if I'm connecting the outermost points of the leaves, like those 3 big leaves on the right and middle, if I'm connecting those with angles, that's what I'm looking for right now. It's called the biggest enveloping shape. And then I go one set smaller and I'm looking at, okay, the enveloping shape between all the blossom petals. Like what kind of a shape do I get here? And I'm being very careful in how I do that. Then I blob the placement of the leaves. And when I say blob, I literally mean I just making blobby shapes that don't necessarily look like leaves. And I don't want them to look like leaves at this point because I don't want to get attached to what I'm drawing at this point. See, if I'm aiming for good details right away, I will never want to make corrections because I'll get emotionally attached to what I have. And then if I notice something is off, I'll have a struggle. There's going to be tension inside of me, and I don't want any of that. So I'm keeping things loose or open. Pick whatever word makes sense to you without being sloppy. So just because these lines are rougher doesn't mean I'm being sloppy. I'm actually being very attentive. And again, the things I'm looking for are how big, where on the page, what angle. Hannah is celebrating the Pentagon. All right, we're on a roll already. Okay, so, and I always talk to myself when I draw just to keep track of things. So lean into that weirdness of being the person who talks to themselves. You can, talk quietly to yourself and keep your weirdness inside. But tonight we shall celebrate. We shall celebrate our weirdness by talking out loud. At least I will, because like that you can benefit from it. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 6. Okay, this here is missing. Okay, so at this point I have my erasable underdrawing. I'm going to switch into a slightly different mode that is not quite yet the detail mode. So in the next phase, I'm making my shapes more particular. And I'm at about 6 minutes right now. So I'll have to keep this in mind because of point number 2 that I shared earlier. Point number 2 was, what's my focus going to be? And I'm going to make my focus the bee. So that means me becoming more particular about my shapes. I will start that at the bee. Why? Because if I only have 5.5 minutes left and I want the focus of my little sketch practice to be the bee, then I better get to it. I don't want to waste time on the leaves then. If I have extra time left, I'll get those in. But you always want to be very focused and intentional about what it is you're hoping to achieve. So this leads me to my next point. So my focus is going to be the bee, now getting into the shape specificity, as I call it. And this leads me to the next point where I'm counting out the elements or naming out the elements. So I have a head, I have a torso or thorax, and I have the abdomen. And now I need some wings. So, and this is, again, where your artist's duties come in. Just because your reference image might be unclear, then you have to seek out, okay, I only see one wing. Let me seek out, where do I see signs of the second wing? Where can I clarify what's not clear in the image? So our job as artists is not just to copy, our job as artists is to clarify. And so I have my main parts. Let's get that little antenna in here. And then let's get some legs happening. 1. And for that too, I'm counting. What are the parts? What am I seeing? My 3 parts. And then I have this long back leg. And then I always look comparatively. Compared to that middle leg, how long is this back leg? What are the angles? Okay, so now that I have the bee, I'm gonna add in some of the pestles and stamen elements. And again, I'm counting. I have 1. This is the one that's connecting to the foot. Here's this one. This probably could get bigger. 3. And by me counting, I'm already slowing myself down. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. One more. And I'm asking myself, how do they arrange? So rather than just kind of looking at one and then the next and then the next, I'm also want to zoom back out and then see how they connect with each other in terms of angles. What time do I have left? Okay, 2 minutes. So I'm going to bring it back to my little bee. I'm going to now go over this more kind of angular shape and start to press harder on some of the elements and maybe add some more details. Like you see how her thorax is furry. So I can only indicate that if I have a very, very pointy pencil. And whatever angularity might have happened earlier from me angling out my shape, I'm now kind of going back over that and adding some more of the subtle changes. And let's get some of these, what are they called? Ribbons or dark bands. Stripes, they're called stripes, Carolyn. The dark stripes that wrap around the abdomen, let's get some of those in. And so I want to, or I'm gonna use them to establish the idea that the abdomen is rounded. So I might draw them slightly different than I see them. So see how I arc them up? So now it looks almost like I'm looking up at the abdomen. Maybe not the best choice. Maybe I should have made it go the other way, but this is what I decided. And this is what I get. Okay. All right, let's go to the next image. Let's do this one. I'm going to set the timer again. Okay, I'll just change my paper though. You can already get started, so decide what it is you want to focus on. I'm going to stick with graphite. I'm going to try a different brand. So this is the Palomino. So earlier I used the Stettler. This is now the Palomino. I'm beginning with an underdrawing. And I enjoy the cluster of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 buds. So when I have those 5 in my sketch, and of course the little bug, the bug has to be there too. Okay, so in the underdrawing, just to reiterate, I'm establishing where I want these things to be on my page, how big I want them to be on my page, where they are in relationship to each other. I'm looking at those big outer angles, whether it's the biggest outer angle or whether it's some big angles within. And then beginning with my most favorite part, I start to become more specific. And no, specific in my languaging does not mean detailed yet. Specific just means that when I look at the shape, I'm becoming more clear on what type of shape it is. If you had to find the high point of your shape, where would it be? And where does it then change direction again? So you see this point right here, that would be this one right here. That would be a high point, or we call this an apex. And so we go from here to a new angle here, and then there's another new angle beginning here, another new angle right here. And like that, I become very clear. So if you've wondered why your shapes are just, not all that, it's usually because you're relying on curvy lines and not on angles. 3, 4, 5. So in this picture, I see 5 legs. I'm not fleshing them out yet. Okay, so this belongs to the bud below. So this goes up. So this is the remnants of the outside of the bud. So here's something that my mind is wondering. So the word bud, like flower bud, is that connected to the word buddy? Anybody know? I'm always curious about language origins and interconnections. So if I got anybody watching, even if you catch this after the live, tell me in the comments. I want to know if any of you know. Okay, so now I have a better shape for this bigger bud in the middle. Let me see what time. Okay, I have 10 minutes left. So let's flesh out some of the other shapes nearby, since I have a little bit of time. So this has this beautiful short teardrop shape. And we have this little offshoot here. So one of my points earlier on was about that underdrawing, right? So I'm still in the underdrawing phase. Like, yes, I had this very kind of sketchy, blobby underdrawing phase, which is faint. Now I'm pressing darker, especially so you guys can see better what I'm working on. but this, I still consider this under drawing because it's not quite the detail phase yet. So you will have noticed I'm leaving out any of the hairy texture, for example, or any of the smaller indentations along the outer edges. So that's not quite yet the time for it. Not because I'm not going to get to it. Like in my plan, it is to get to those things, at least on the bug and like at least right here in the last 2 to 3 minutes. And of course, goes without saying, you can focus on whatever you want to focus on in your drawings, and you can pause and keep drawing for a whole hour. That's absolutely up to you, and that's why I love sketching together on YouTube, because you can be more in control. Like if we hung out at my studio and I changed the image, then can't go back because I changed the image, but because everybody else will be going along, but in the privacy of your own four walls, you can decide how long you want to draw on something. Okay, so I'm feeling I have 8 minutes left. Let me do this one down here. I'm going to leave that one aside for now, and then we'll do some more detail work. So by the way, you know how earlier I said that focusing in on details, especially in your drawing practice, is therapeutic because it slows you down, it brings you into the present moment. That's not just me saying that because I think so. This has actually scientifically been researched and been proven to be true. So I'm not just like making a claim here and saying, well, that's what I think and you just believe me, but I'm always reading and listening to the latest neuroscience research. And when you draw in a way where you're narrating to yourself what it is exactly that you're seeing, that's basically a mindfulness practice. If you're like doing a strict, let's say, Buddhist mindfulness practice, like you're just going to be sitting there and you're paying attention to what you're hearing, what you're smelling, what sensations you're feeling on your body. And that is a great practice, of course, in and of itself. But for us artists, we have like this super awesome gift available to us where we can do mindfulness while we draw. And but to do so, we want to be in this kind of narrative mindset, and not narrative in terms of like telling ourselves like these stories about whether this is good or whether this is bad, but narrative in terms of descriptive. So maybe let's just use that word descriptive, where we pay attention to short angle, slightly longer angle, angle that's moving over, angle that's long and even more flat, big directional change. And the more you do that, you'll notice that your breathing changes. And if you know anything about our nervous system, the way we breathe or not can either agitate it or mellow it out. So that's something that you can do. If you want to learn a little bit more about that, I have a free resource on my website for that. And you don't even need to sign up for my email list for that. So if you go to artistofpractice.com, And you kind of scroll down where all the freebies are. There is one on sketching for stressful times or something like that. And I actually cited some of the research in there, and there's some cool practices like in that vein. See, so here, I'm gonna zoom in for a second. So sorry if I'm gonna get into close for what you're focusing on. I just wanted to see what's happening on the head here. So we have an antenna here. I promise I'll zoom back out if you're working on a different bud. Antenna there. And then we have the mouth here. And then there's something else. I don't know what that is, but okay, so let me zoom back out here. Come on. There we go. So of course, if you want to focus on details, you need to have a good source that you're drawing from. So if you have a blurry picture, or can barely make out what it is that you're looking at, maybe use that blurry picture for shape practice, like practicing drawing silhouettes. Maybe use it for seeing the big value groups rather than trying to make out the details. So you always want to work smart. You want to work in favor of what it is you want to do. And if you're thinking, well, what, sometimes I just don't know what I want to do, and I just start, and that's valid. That's totally valid. You don't always need to know right away what to focus on. But for that, I would say start to pay attention to what delights you in the drawing the most. Like, where do you go like, oh, how cool is that? And then as you realize, oh, I keep coming back to this area, I must really like it. Then kind of allow yourself to linger on that. Make that one of your focus areas. Okay, so for this leg here, I'm going to redo that. I think that was a little bit too unspecific. So I've switched by now from my shape phase into the detail phase. And I'm noticing it's narrower up top. And then it narrows down here too. I had it too rectangular. And for me, my pencil is almost getting too dull. So my needle point is almost gone. Let me see if I can find, of course not, where is it? I wanted to find my sandpaper, see if I can find a tip back on this. There we go. Oops. And so if it's hard to see what the legs look like, here's where I would take a moment again. I'm going to do this alongside with you and notice, okay, what do these legs look like? So I have this one pretty good. This one is fine. And this third one has a different angle. So let's bring that, and it overlaps here. And then there's like this more brown looking one. Okay. And then this here is thick, the one behind. Oh, and then this is sitting, I see. This is actually the leg here. Okay, let's zoom back out. All right. So this was our second one. Really like that one. Let's do another bug. Let me set another timer here. Do another 15 on this. Let me just see if I can just scoot this over and still have room. I'm going to try a different pencil now. Just because like that, I don't have to resharpen all the time. Okay, so I'm going for the Creta Color Very Thin pencil. Okay. So this is going to be my blob for, I don't even know what kind of flower this is, what kind of bud this is. So I'm looking at big angle right here between the tip of, let's just call it the thing, the tip of the thing and the left side of the thing, and then it angles down here. And then here I'm looking at this angle. And I literally like drawing in my, they're called angular relationships. There's nothing wrong with having those kind of plotting lines in your drawing, especially if you're a beginner. It's usually something that you don't do, and you kind of maybe are resistant to doing that because you don't see it in anybody else's work. And the reason why you don't see that in people's work is because they've erased it out, or like if they're already masterful, they don't need it anymore. But most people like most professional artists, they use those alignments too, but they don't share those drawings on their Instagram feed, let's say, just because most people just share their finished products. And so then if you're a newer artist, or somebody who's just starting to learn, then you assume that in drawing you only draw the fancy stuff, when in fact there is an underlying process to that finished outcome. And so if this is the first time you ever hear about this, you've just gotten a permission slip to put training wheels without, and these are not training wheels that we're like frowning down upon, but more like you have a permission slip to help yourself out, you know, to be good to yourself, to make sure that you anchor things right. You know what? It's like people who build houses, what are they called? Contractors, like they use tape measures, right? And they better do. And they use levels. They better use their levels. So us as artists using these kind of angular alignment lines, it's nothing different. Like it doesn't mean you're a bad artist if you're using angular alignment lines in your underdrawing. It just means that you know the process, you know which tools to use. So don't know why I just got on that soapbox, but there it was. Okay, so as you might have noticed, so I've gone from the big outer shape, now getting into the smaller sub shape. I'm starting to account for one leaf thingy, two, there's a third one poking out back here. Then we have this one, which is aiming at the bug. Then we have the other one that's being reached by light. And then we have a couple that are not reached by light, the kind of the darker ones in the backdrop. Now here's something where you now have to decide for yourself. Within this, what do you want to focus on? And you might think, what do you mean? Like the beetle, like, or, you know, like it might be whatever it is, but there is still options, or there are still options. You could focus on the hairs, that kind of mossy tuft. That could become your detail focus. And then you would start plotting out, okay, clumps. Let's just say here's a clump here. And then there are two clumps here. Then there's a bigger gap. So just because you might focus on the moss doesn't mean that you jump into the individual moss strands right away. So we always go general to specific, and incrementally so. So just because we did a big general shape out here doesn't mean now you have a free pass to jump into individual hairs. You just go to the next smaller and the next smaller, if that makes any sense. So I love these weird, there must be a name for this, like the unfolding leaves that contain the bud. Come on, what are they called? I like those, so I'm going to be focusing on them. I have all kinds of questions today about what things are called. In my last university drawing class, I kept blanking on the word stamen and pestle, and my students had to tell me what those things are called. Couldn't think of it. Okay, so see, right now in that area, I'm getting, my underdrawing is starting to, what's the word I'm looking for? Obfuscate what it is I want to work on. So I'm taking some time to erase. So that's why erasable underdrawing is the key, right? And again, for that, you need to know your materials. You need to know what materials will allow you to erase as you keep becoming more specific. Okay, so now I'm going to switch on this little container leaf. I'm going to call them container leaves. On this little container leaf, I'm going to switch now from my specific shape to detail. And so again, I'm going to find the pokiest of my pencils. And so here now I'm going to add, we have these two little hairs on this corner. I don't even know if that reads in the stream because I can't zoom my camera in any more than that, unfortunately. But here, now I'm imagining if I was a microbe crawling along the outer edge of this container leaf, at what point would I have to change direction? At what point would I walk past another little hair? At what point would there just a little dip in the road? Ah. So for this, I need a better camera where I can really zoom in all the way. So I hope you can still make this out. I'm doing my best to at least narrate what it is I'm doing. And I will, the ones that I like, the ones that aren't completely horrid, but I like today's drawing so far, I will share them on my Instagram account. So if you are on Instagram, just check out my feed. That's at Kira Studios. And then you can kind of see the details on those images that I'll be posting, if that's something you were wanting to get closer to. And also, if you are on Instagram, I'd love for you to post your drawings. And you don't have to make them public. You can just send me a DM and share what you drew. Okay, so see, this took quite a while. I had to slow down. So that, again, this is the tax, this is the toll that we have to shell out if we want to have some beautiful stuff happening in our drawings. And so no, you can't rush your way to nuance. Nuance demands a price. Now, bravura or like a strong statement, you can get that quickly. You just gotta have the guts to lay it down, and hopefully the stars align just so, and your practice has been conditioning you to, when you lay it down, sometimes hit it. But if nuance is the thing that you're after, that takes time. And I'm not saying that you have to aspire to nuance. Again, like, that's the beauty about art. There's so many different types of artists, and they all are valid. It's just some will resonate with you and some won't. And that's something to pay attention to. So if you watch the master copy stream that we had a couple of weeks ago, we did master copies of portraits. There was the Holbein type of portrait, which was more linear and very sensitive to minute details. And then there was the Greuze detail, the Greuze portrait, which was much more a much stronger statement. I don't know, strong. I don't mean strong in like better. I just mean like a more. Yeah, I'm not thinking of the right word here, but I hope you know what I mean. Like, it wasn't so subtle, but it was very clear. So just to be clear, I mentioned this earlier, but in case I glossed over it, only once I'm in the detail phase. So we go under drawing, specific shapes, and then we get into the detail phase. Only when I'm in the detail phase do I allow myself to press hard. Only when I know that my scaffolding is built in the right place, to the right scale, then I press hard, because then I can't lose anything anymore, or I can lose very little. So here, the line that I'm drawing right this moment is not an outer edge, but this is an inner edge. This is like, you know how every leaf has a thickness to it? So these lines translate the fact that there is a thickness to this leaf. I'm exaggerating it a little bit, but here is another plane change where you see that container leaf roll into shadow. So I'm going to draw that. I'm going to leave the shadow be for now. Like, I'm not going to add any value there because my focus is on the details of the edges. So another way how this might be a bit more therapeutic today is because we actually have 15 minutes almost per drawing. And usually if you're here more often, you know that we usually only get maybe one 15-minute image at the very end of the session. So I'm being nice to you guys tonight. And I always have to reiterate, no, I'm not choosing these short durations for the images because I want to stress you out. It's about making those quick decisions and training your capability of making good decisions. And as you know, my quick decisions are sometimes just as crappy as anybody else's. So there's no hiding, no pretending to be perfect here. I'm seeing some comments, but I'll have to look at them later. Sorry if I've been ignoring any of them, but I'm excited to look at them in just a minute. It's just the way my screen is laid out. Some of the reference images is blocking that. So let me change that real quick. So glad, Chris, that you're getting the full load today. Everything is on the plate. And then Hannah, what are you saying? I've been reading. Oh, the hidden geometry of flowers. That sounds amazing. Ooh, I'll have to look that up. Thanks for sharing that. Okay, so next image. Let's see, what time is it? Let's do this one. Let's go out on this one. Let's do 20 minutes on it. Shall we like go totally unusual for the Kira sketch session? We're gonna go 20 minutes and then we'll call it a night. So let me add 20 minutes to this timer here. Awesome. I'm gonna change my paper and then see if I can find another sharp pencil. And I'm loving all of these. I'm kind of hoping that I get some time to work a little bit longer on the drawings. Okay. I liked how the Prisma colors are feeling. I'm gonna resharpen them, so if you're gonna hear this weird sound, it's just my pencil sharpener. Here we go. So here we have an actual blossom again. So under drawing, if I kind of look at the connection of all the outer edges, kind of creates this arc. So if you need a reason for going through the trouble of an underdrawing and just knowing that professional artists do this isn't enough of a reason for you, here's a good reason. Have you ever started a drawing and then you run off the page? I'm pretty sure you have, because almost everybody has. And because almost everybody has, artists have gotten annoyed by this over the ages. And that's why we have these different processes to keep us on the page. And not just on the page in general, but exactly on the page where you want to have your drawing. In the size that you want your drawing. Not just like being at the mercy of hopefully it'll turn out kind of sorta in the right place. But no, you want to be in the driver's seat of your own drawing. And by going through an underdrawing process, you can ensure this. I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself in terms of, see how I'm starting to angle out my leaf here. I'm going to backtrack and I'm going to go back into a blobby phase. I'm going to say, okay, here's a petal, here's a curvy stem, another curvy stem and petal here. And again, blobby phase, or first part of the underdrawing, the things don't have to look like themselves yet. The leaf doesn't have to look like a leaf. The blossom doesn't have to look like a blossom. All you're doing in this part of the phase, this part of the drawing, is staking out where and how big your items are going to be. So here I'm connecting now all the petal parts. Like here's a back petal in the back that doesn't get hit by the light. Here are the two petals that the bumblebee, it's called, that the bumblebee has its head nearby. And see how there's an arc created. So that's the other thing about if you're focusing on details. You have to relate it back out to the bigger picture. Otherwise, you'll end up with a chaotic jumble. A chaotic jumble of random markings, but they won't create that kind of unified big picture. Okay, so now we're getting to the bumblebee. Here I'll throw in another free extra. I'm getting a free German lesson. The word for bumblebee is Hummel. So there, now you learned about neuroscience, botany, and a bonus German lesson. Hummel. So you know those little kitschy sculptures, the little children out of ceramic, they're all painted. Those are called Hummels. That's how you spell that word. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about, but you can Google it. It'll tell you. Okay, so right now, so I laid out the body of the bumblebee. So I have head, thorax, abdomen, and I can see the long back leg here. And then we have this leg. And I want to make sure that this kind of middle leg matches up with the blossom elements that I have. So that goes to the point I was saying earlier, know your parts, count out your parts. 1, 2, let's move this up. And then that will help you place things in relationship. Okay, so this may not quite look like much to you if you're just kind of hopping in on the stream and didn't catch the beginning. So it looks very abstract, right? And I'm not stressing about that because I know that this is just part of the drawing or part of the process. So if you're prone to judging the beauty, the accuracy or whatnot of your piece early on, that's something I recommend you stop, just because it doesn't help. You know, if you're thinking, oh, that looks nothing like it. Well, no, it doesn't, but in a way it's even better because it kind of lays the structure. All right, got my underdrawing in place, at least, you know, roughly. So now I'm gonna make my choice of the thing that I'm seeing. What do I want my focus to be? And it's kind of, you know, for me, gotta be the bumblebee because it's colorful, it's right up front, it's big, it's easy to see. But you might be different. You might be delighted by these 3 leaves up there and how they're kind of like doing the swooshy thing up there. So whatever you love, that's what you focus on. So I'm gonna begin by getting into the more detailed phase on the bumblebee because I don't want to run out of time. So I'm beginning by making these shapes even more specific. And let me see if I can, I don't want to zoom out too much in case you did choose those leaves. There we go. So I'm not quite getting the eye in yet. I'm not quite getting the, I almost said antlers, the antennas. I'm just specifying my shapes a bit more. Again, using my angles. And so if today's today's lesson was bug anatomy, which that would be a fun lesson. Shall we do that? I would probably have a, what does one call this book? Like a book where you have like details about certain bugs. Like I'd have that kind of book nearby, like a lexicon of bugs. And then I would like kind of get a sense for, okay, how many legs do they have and where exactly do they come out? Because then I can inform what's kind of unclear in the picture with some secondary research. And that's what we do, by the way, if you draw the figure and if you're studying anatomy. That's how you should study anatomy, not only by looking at a photo reference, but by having an anatomy book for artists on your lap, on the desk next to you, where you can look up, okay, from this point of view, what should I be seeing? What muscles are in the position that I have in front of me? And then you use that to make your drawing better, or you deconstruct it. So this here, what the wing that I just drew, that was a little bit unclear in the picture to me. Not sure if that's exactly how it is, but I'm making my best guess. And this here seems to be the leg. And I think this leg is in front of some sort of, like it's, I think another flower petal element that it's in front of. So this is what I mean, where you don't just account for the parts, like how many parts are there, but you want to understand them. What is it? Or at least if you don't know what it is, because it's not entirely necessary, but you want to understand what shape is it. I think I've told this before. There is this story about the great American painter George Inness, who was a landscape painter who I love. You should look him up if you haven't heard of him before. George Inness. He paints these beautifully atmospheric landscapes. And there's this anecdote about him where like some collector or gallerist kind of was in the studio with him and he's looking at a new painting, and he says something along the lines of like, oh, I love how you painted that wheelbarrow in the back there. And Ness is like, oh, is that what it was? Where like he himself didn't really know what it was, but he painted it so well, like in terms of like the simplified shape of it, that it read to somebody who didn't even see the scene. It's like you don't always need to know exactly what it is, just as long as you capture the shape good enough, well enough. Okay, so see, now I have my bumblebee in a clear shape. So now I'm going to see if I can add some details. So I'm switching to my pointiest, pokiest pencil. And I see another comment. I'll get to it, Roland, I promise. Let me just draw a little bit further, and then I'll see if I can click on it to see it better. So here, when I get into the detail phase, again, I want to vary. I don't know if I said it before, but so I don't know if I should say again, but I want to vary my pressure. So I've talked about pressing hard, but just because I'm in the detail phase doesn't mean I have to press hard all over. I'm gonna actually seek out opportunities to have very thin lines and more accented lines. So that's why I want my pencil to be razor sharp or needle thin, the point of it, because then I can have super thin lines and thicker accented lines. Let me see if I can click on this comment real quick. Okay, so me drawing this bee, the bumblebee, in this angular fashion is not a stylistic choice. It's a drawing process part, or meaning it is a part of my drawing process. And it's actually not just my personal drawing process. It is, for example, how the French academic figure drawing school teaches the beginning part of the drawing process. So what it does when you break, let's say you have, a shape like this in your drawing in the beginning. This is a lumpy shape. It's unclear. It loses the beauty and clarity of what it is that you're drawing. By you coming in here and forcing yourself to be clear about, where are my apices, meaning the apex? And when does it change direction to a different angle? And doing that with lines that are longer than they need to be. See how these lines are kind of sticking out beyond? That's how you chisel your shapes into spot on, clear shapes that have structure, that don't feel wobbly. And then you can come back later, lighten this up. You still have the ghost of your structure left. And then you can come in here and record any of the small details along here, maybe rounding some of the angles back out. But it makes a difference whether you go from trying to capture all the details right away without having that structured shape underneath, to whether you do have that structured shape underneath. If you don't believe me, test it out, see what results you get, and then you choose what works for you. But no, it's not a stylistic choice. You could make it a stylistic choice. Like if you dig the way it looks, you're like, oh, I want to see how far I can take that. You can totally play it up. But no, like I personally, I enjoy organic forms. I'm not a huge fan of geometric shapes at all. But I love how specific and clear my drawings become when I have this underdrawing plotted out so clearly. Good question. I love it. So you see, earlier I was talking about varying my line weight, super thin to accented and thick. So you can vary that depending on the lighting situation. You see how there's this highlight on the edge of the wing here? So this is the perfect place to break a line. And, again, when we're beginners, we think like, oh, I need to spell everything out. I need to draw everything in. But when you do that, you're kind of being pedantic as an artist. And I don't mean to be offensive, but like it's like we're not giving the viewer any credit when we draw like that. The viewer's brain, back to neuroscience, the viewer's brain delights in participating in the viewing. And so if you have broken lines, if you have lost edges when you work with shadows, it gives them something to participate in. And I need to shut up right now because as I'm getting into the wing, I'm getting lost. So earlier we were saying we need to become aware of the elements. So right now I need to be quiet and count out how many facets I see. So slowing down and counting. So I see this very narrow one. So 1, and then 2. I'm going to make this light. So this is my erasable underdrawing for the facets. 2. And then 3. And then 4. We're at the edge of the wing now. Okay, so I've plotted out this mid segment here, so I'm going to go out from there. So 1. And this is where I would zoom in, but I don't want to zoom in and mess you guys up if you're drawing from a different part. 2, 2, 3, 4. And see, again, I'm keeping this light. I'm just kind of placing all the different facets, and then later on, if I have time, 1, 2, I'll see if I can weave them together in a way where they feel connected and not just like a jungle of chaotic details. So again, you want to count out, single out the particulars, and then zoom out and tie them all back together. Oh no, but you know what? This is my stream. I'm gonna keep going another 2 to 3 minutes. So if you have to leave, you have the permission to go, which is ridiculous because it's YouTube and you can go whenever the hell you want. But I'm gonna keep drawing just for another minute or 2. So this is the leg actually. Okay, so now I have my wing facets plotted out. I just want to finish that thought. I'm going to see what is the most dominant part of that. So I have the edge, of course, then I have this centerpiece. And I have this dark part here. And then I have the thinner stuff happening next to it. And I'm feeling now the dullness of my pencil. It's starting to become problematic. I don't want to lean over to sharpen it right now. This. And then here, these are softer, these outer lines. I don't know if they have a different texture on the outside of their wings. That would be interesting to find out. See, and that's the cool thing. I mean, don't you just love being an artist? Like, the cool thing is, like, when you take time to zero in on these things, you notice stuff that you didn't notice before. And then, like, it gives you, like, a breadcrumbs, like, go research that, find that out. And it gives you permission to read an interesting book, to find out something new. And then whenever we have cocktail parties again, if that ever should happen, then you can wow people with your random ass insights about Bumble Bee's wings and why the outer edge is thicker and the inner facets are thinner. And on that note, where's my mouse? On that note, I shall end this drawing. I hope you had a good time. And before we hop off, let me recap the lesson. So if you've been drawing along and you didn't have a chance to write down the pointers I had for you, grab a notepad and I'll give you the pointers one more time for how to capture really good details. Number 1, you want to begin with an underdrawing. And this underdrawing is there to establish where on the page you want to have your drawing, how big you want it to be, how many elements there are on that particular part. Sorry, I don't know if you can hear the ambulance in the background. Second point, once you have your underdrawing, that's scaffolding that will allow you to stay on the page, but that will also give you the right spot to then place the detail on top of. You got to decide what you want to focus on, because here's the reality. We're always under time constraints. Maybe you're a lucky, one of the lucky few who has 6 uninterrupted hours of drawing time. I know I don't have that. I maybe have 20 minutes in the morning. Sometimes I have 60 minutes in the morning. Sometimes I have 5 minutes. And if I only have that little time, I want to know what I'm after. So if I'm after the bumblebee, once I have my underdrawing, I better snap to and get to that bumblebee. So that's the second point. Know your focus, begin there. Number 3, once you're working on that focus area, count the elements that are in that focus area. How many blossom petals? How many antennae? How many leg segments? How many stripes? All of that, count them out, locate them, and as you do so, talk to yourself. You can do so quietly in your head, but you gotta keep on it. Number 4, make sure that your tools are working for you and not against you. So choose a tool where it can stay light for the underdrawing, but then bear down heavier later on to get more accented lines in the back part of the drawing. And also that your paper is set up to capture details. So if you have rough texture paper, that's good for holding lots and lots of pigment, not so good for subtle details. So a smoother paper with a graphite pencil combination is really good for focusing on details. Or as I did later on today, I used some colored pencils that aren't too waxy. So I used the Kohl Erase Prismacolor for that. And the last point for how to capture details well, you gotta slow down. Details, they demand a toll from us, and that toll is to slow down, because only then do you notice the stuff that others gloss over. And if you're hoping to imbue your artwork with that special something where people just like, oh, did you see that sparkle? Or, oh my God, do you see the hair? Or whatever it is, you know what it is. If you want that for your art, you gotta slow down, because you don't, that stuff, it doesn't, it's like a wild animal. It doesn't just stand and appear in front of you. It's you gotta sneak up on it, or you gotta bide your time and wait and linger until it kind of shows up for you. So I hope that made sense to you. Let me just hop over into the chat one more time. Excellent. Glad, Roland, that it made sense to you. If you have any other questions, let me know. You can either pop them into the chat or in the comments below. I always check after the video is done and answer any questions after the fact. If you like this, give me a thumbs up, share it with your friends. And if you like my style of teaching, if you want to have more of that, if you want to stay in the loop of what's happening, get on my insiders email list. Below this video, there's a description box. So if you click the see more thing or whatever it says, there is a link below there to my website, artistsofpractice.com. And there you can choose which freebie you want. I have multiple freebies. You can have a workbook on how to make your drawings better. I have a tool guide for pen and ink drawing. And I have a 4-day mini series, a video mini series on how to start figure drawing out in the right way. So you pick the one you want, get on my insiders email list, get weekly updates on what's happening. And those emails that I send, they're always inspiring, hopefully funny, uplifting, anything to keep you moving, to stay on your drawing game so you can get better and stay more consistent. So that's my goal. Again, share your drawings with me on Instagram if you feel inclined to do so. And next week, we're back to figure drawing. We're going to do gestures, have a beautiful model lined up for us, and I can't wait to draw with you.